All right, so let's dive in and imagine this. You're in your apartment, right? Just going about your day, and suddenly, boom, emergency hits.
Mm.
Power outage, flash flood, whatever your city likes to throw at you.
Yeah.
And you don't have like a basement full of supplies. You're not one of those doomsday preppers.
Right.
Could you actually survive for like 72 hours or more?
Well, that's a great question, and I think a lot of people, especially those of us living in urban environments, can relate to that feeling of, limited space
Yeah.
and maybe not having a ton of extra room for, emergency supplies.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's exactly what this guide, the Compact Urban Survival Kit by Portuguese Prepper, is really geared towards.
Okay.
It's about practical urban resilience, especially in these smaller living spaces that many of us find ourselves in.
Exactly, because wilderness survival skills aren't going to help much when you're, stuck on the 10th floor of an apartment building.
Right. You're not foraging for berries in Central Park.
Exactly. So what are some of the key things this guide emphasizes?
Well, it all starts with the absolute essentials, and that's water.
Okay.
We need about a gallon per person per day.
Okay.
But, in a small apartment storing that much can be a real challenge.
Oh, yeah. I can already picture myself tripping over water jugs every time I turn around.
Exactly. So this guide is all about those clever space-saving techniques.
Okay.
It actually recommends using hydration packs, the kind hikers use,
Oh, yeah.
and storing them flat under your bed.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, you're maximizing that under-bed storage.
Exactly.
And it's easy to grab and go if you need to evacuate.
And it's out of the way, It's
You
not
know-
like a big, bulky...
Out of sight, out of mind, but
Yeah.
still there when you need it.
I like it. All right, so we've got the storage part figured out, but thinking about your city specifically, what are some of the potential water risks you might face?
Right, so that's where it's important to kind of personalize this approach.
Okay.
We're thinking about aiding pipes, water main breaks, maybe even flooding, depending on where you live.
You're right. I hadn't even considered those.
Yeah, those are all very real possibilities in an urban environment.
Yeah.
So in addition to that stored water, the guide also really stresses portable filters,
Okay.
like the Sawyer Mini or a Life Straw.
Oh, yeah.
They're tiny,
Yeah.
but they can make almost any water source safe to drink.
Okay, but those filters are pretty small. Are they really up to the task of purifying, floodwater, for example?
They are. They're designed to remove bacteria, viruses, even protozoa,
Wow.
really anything that can make you sick.
Okay.
And for the ultimate minimalist,
Yeah.
there's always water purification tablets as a backup.
Oh, okay. I like it. So we've got our water situation sorted.
Yes.
But what about food?
Ah, yes, the all-important food.
Yeah, because I can barely fit a week's worth of groceries in my fridge, let alone enough to survive an emergency.
Right, I hear you. So the guide steers clear of that bulk buying approach
Okay.
and focuses on calorie-dense, space-efficient options.
Okay.
We're talking emergency food bars,
Yeah.
which I know don't sound very appetizing.
Yeah, I was going to say, those aren't exactly known for their gourmet flavors.
Right, but they pack a lot of nutrients in a small package.
Yeah.
Brands like Survival Tabs or Go Time Repper are specifically designed for emergencies.
Okay.
Think of it as fuel to keep you going.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what if I want something a bit more well-edible?
I understand. Then good old canned goods are your friend.
Okay.
Beans, tuna soups, all those pantry staples that
Yeah.
have a long shelf life.
Yep.
But here's the point. The guide emphasizes you absolutely need a manual can opener.
Oh, good point.
Don't rely on electric ones if the power is out.
Yeah, I have a few cans in my pantry right now, but I honestly hadn't thought about how I'd open them without power.
It's one of those things you don't realize until it's too late.
Yeah.
And if you want something tastier and still compact, there's always freeze-dried meals.
Okay.
They've come a long way in terms of flavor.
Really?
You just add water and you're good to go.
I've always been skeptical of those freeze-dried meals. They just seem, I don't know, too artificial.
I get it, but technology has improved a lot.
Okay.
Brands like Mountain House actually have some pretty tasty options these days.
Oh!
You can find everything from pasta dishes to curries
Wow.
and even desserts.
Okay. You've officially piqued my curiosity. I might have to give those a try.
You should.
Hmm.
All right, so we've covered water,
Food.
food. Now, what about shelter and warmth?
Ooh, yeah, in a small apartment. Where would I even begin?
Right. So this is where the guide gets really interesting because it's about more than just staying dry.
Okay.
It's about regulating your body temperature, which can be critical in an urban environment.
Okay.
Think about it. If the power goes out in the middle of winter,
Yeah.
your apartment can lose heat very quickly.
Oh, I learned that the hard way a few years ago during a winter storm.
Oh, I
I
don't
was
wanna...
huddled under blankets, shivering, thinking I should have been more prepared.
Right. And that's a common experience.
Yeah.
That's why the guide recommends those emergency Mylar blankets.
Okay.
They take up hardly any space,
Yeah.
but they make a huge difference in retaining heat.
Ah, those shiny silver blankets you see at marathons. They seem almost too thin to make a difference.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But don't underestimate them. They're designed to reflect your body heat back to you,
Oh, okay.
so they're
Yeah.
incredibly effective.
Interesting. So it's not just about like staying warm in my apartment. It's also useful if I had to evacuate or...
Yeah, think about it. If you need to evacuate, you can use them in a temporary shelter
Right.
or even to signal for help.
Oh, yeah, like a
Multi-purpose.
multi-purpose tool. Speaking of tools, what does this guide recommend? Because I can't imagine having room for a whole toolbox.
Exactly. So it's all about multifunctionality.
Okay.
Think about a Leatherman or a Swiss Army knife.
Oh, yeah.
Those compact tools that have a little bit of everything.
I love those. I love a good multi-tool.
Me too. They're so handy to have around.
Yeah. But honestly, is a tiny pair of scissors going to be that helpful in a real emergency?
Well, it's not just about the scissors.
Yeah.
It's about having a screwdriver, pliers, a knife. All those essential tools packed into one compact device.
That's true.
Plus, let's be real, who doesn't love a cool gadget?
Okay, you got me there. I have to ask, though, what about self-defense? Because that feels like a whole other level of preparedness.
Yeah, I know it can be a sensitive topic, and the guide addresses it carefully.
Okay.
It's not about being paranoid or aggressive,
Right.
but about having options in unpredictable situations.
Okay. I can see that. Especially in an urban environment, things can escalate quickly.
Exactly. So you want to be prepared.
Yeah. So what kind of self-defense tools does the guide recommend?
Well, pepper spray is a common suggestion,
Okay.
especially for apartment dwellers.
Yeah.
It's effective even in close quarters, which is important in a smaller space.
Makes sense. And if someone's trying to break in, I imagine pepper spray would be a good deterrent. But what if I'm not comfortable using something like that?
There are other options, like a personal alarm.
A personal alarm? Really? I guess I just associate those with like elderly people.
I understand the skepticism, but think about it. An alarm creates noise,
Yeah.
attracts attention,
Right.
and most importantly, can overcome something called the bystander effect.
The bystander effect, what's that?
It's a psychological phenomenon where people are less likely to help if they think no one else is noticing or taking action.
Oh.
So an alarm kind of cuts through that ambiguity
Okay.
and increases the chances that someone will intervene.
Wow, I hadn't even considered that. So I'm starting to see how even something as simple as an alarm can be a powerful tool.
Exactly. It's about using what you have to create a safer environment for yourself.
All right, so we've covered water, food, shelter tools, even self-defense. What else is like crucial for an urban survival kit?
Well, one thing we can't forget is communication and light.
Okay.
Staying informed during an emergency is absolutely vital, but what happens if your phone dies?
Oh, right. I rely on my phone for everything these days.
Right.
I hadn't even considered what I'd do without it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the guide strongly recommends a battery-powered or hand-crank radio.
Okay, so back to basics. But why a radio specifically? What makes it so important?
Think about it. It's your direct link to official information and emergency broadcasts.
Oh, okay.
You'll know what's happening, where to go, what to do, all without relying on internet access or cell service.
That makes a lot of sense. I guess scrolling through social media isn't going to be an option in a disaster scenario.
Probably not.
Mm.
And in addition to a radio, you'll need battery-powered lights.
Okay.
Not just for seeing in the dark, but also for signaling for help.
Oh, like a modern-day distress signal?
Okay.
I'm starting to see how even everyday objects can take on a whole new meaning in an emergency.
Exactly. It's about thinking creatively and adapting to the situation.
This is all so fascinating. I'm learning so much, and we haven't even gotten to like the organizational aspects yet.
Right.
But that's a conversation for another time.
So we've talked about, water, food, shelter, even self-defense and communication.
Right.
But a compact urban survival kit isn't just about gathering these items.
Right.
It's about how we pack and organize everything.
Yeah, because I imagine just cramming everything randomly into a bag wouldn't be the most helpful in a stressful situation.
Exactly.
Plus, space is limited, so we need to be strategic.
Right. You're not packing for a week-long vacation.
Yeah, exactly.
So the guide stresses the importance of thoughtful packing. And to start, it recommends a sturdy backpack with multiple compartments as your go-to bag.
Okay, that makes sense. A backpack would be much easier to carry than like a bulky suitcase.
Right.
Especially if I need to navigate stairs or tight spaces.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when it comes to packing itself,
Yeah.
Think about those compression bags people use for travel.
Oh, yeah.
They can really squeeze the air out of bulky items like clothing and blankets.
Yeah, those are lifesavers when I'm packing for a trip. I can fit so much more into my suitcase with those.
Exactly. And don't forget about smaller zippered pouches.
Okay.
They're fantastic for keeping things like first aid supplies, toiletries, batteries, all those little essentials
Right.
organized and easy to find.
You know, that's something I always struggle with. I'm constantly digging through my bag trying to find a tiny tube of hand sanitizer or a pen.
Yeah.
Having them in separate pouches would be so much better.
Right. It just makes everything more accessible.
Mm.
And another helpful tip from the guide is to label everything clearly.
Okay.
It might seem obvious, but in an emergency when you're stressed and time is of the essence, clear labels can be invaluable.
Yeah, the last thing I want to be doing is rummaging through my bag trying to figure out what's what.
Exactly. So we've got the bag, the packing techniques, and the labeling down.
Yeah.
Anything else we need to keep in mind?
What else?
Yes. And this is something many people overlook.
Okay.
Maintenance and regular updates.
Oh, maintenance. What
Yeah.
does that entail exactly? I'm picturing myself dusting my survival kit every week.
Well, it's not quite that involved.
Okay.
But you do need to check expiration dates on your food and any medications, test your flashlight batteries, make sure your water filter is still in working order.
Right, because a survival kit isn't going to be very helpful if everything's expired or broken.
Exactly. It's like having a car without ever getting an oil change.
Yeah. Perfect analogy.
It's about keeping everything in good condition so it's ready when you need it. The guide recommends checking and updating your kit at least twice a year, ideally when the seasons change.
That sounds like a reasonable schedule. It keeps it on your radar without being too overwhelming.
Yeah.
So we've covered packing and maintenance.
Yes.
Is there anything else before we move on to the next topic?
There is one last but incredibly important aspect.
Okay.
Personalization.
Oh, personalization.
This guide provides a fantastic framework, but it's up to each individual to tailor their kit to their unique needs and circumstances.
Okay, that makes sense. We've already talked about like city-specific water risks.
Right.
But what other factors should we consider?
Well, think about your personal health.
Okay.
Do you have any allergies or medical conditions that require specific medications?
Right.
What about dietary restrictions?
Right. I'm lactose intolerant. So I definitely need to think about alternative milk options for my kid.
Exactly. And what about your apartment building itself? Are there any specific hazards or features you need to be aware of?
Okay.
For example, if you live in a high-rise, how would you evacuate if the elevators weren't working?
Ooh, that's a good point. I live on the 8th floor, so I definitely need to have a plan for that.
Eh.
Maybe keep a sturdy pair of walking shoes in my kit.
Exactly. And are there any potential hazards specific to your building? Maybe it's located in an area prone to earthquakes or wildfires?
You know, you're right. My building is pretty close to a major fault line. I should probably do some research on earthquake preparedness.
Absolutely. The more you understand your specific risks, the better equipped you'll be to prepare. And remember, it's not just about the physical items, it's about the knowledge and peace of mind that comes with being prepared.
I love that. It's about feeling empowered, not paranoid. So now that we've covered like the basics, how do we go from feeling overwhelmed to actually feeling mentally and emotionally prepared?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's something the guide addresses directly. It emphasizes that preparedness is as much about mental resilience as it is about physical supplies.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
But how do you actually cultivate that mental resilience? It's easy to get caught up in the what ifs and start feeling anxious.
One of the best ways to combat anxiety is through knowledge.
Correct.
The more you understand about potential risks and how to respond to them,
Right.
the more confident you'll feel.
So it's about taking control, being proactive rather than reactive.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of community.
Okay.
Connecting with like-minded individuals, sharing information and resources, even practicing skills together, can make a world of difference.
So it's okay to reach out to others and admit that I don't have all the answers. So I
Absolutely.
might have to be a lone wolf prepper.
Not at all. In fact, the guide encourages people to connect.
Yeah.
There's a whole online community of urban preppers who are more than willing to share their knowledge and experiences.
That's great to know. I was starting to feel like this was something I had to figure out entirely on my own.
And remember, preparedness isn't about living in fear or constantly anticipating disaster.
You're right.
It's about empowering yourself to face challenges with confidence and knowing that you have the tools and resources to handle whatever comes your way.
That's a really great way to put it. It's about feeling prepared, not paranoid.
Exactly. And finally, don't forget the importance of staying calm and adaptable in an emergency.
Okay.
Things rarely go exactly according to plan, so being able to adjust your approach and think creatively is crucial.
Right, because in a real emergency, I probably won't have time to pull out my survival guide and flip through the pages. I'll
Yeah,
need to be able to think on my feet.
exactly. Having a plan is important, but so is being able to adapt to unexpected situations.
So it's not just about following a rigid set of rules.
Right.
It's about being resourceful and using what you have to solve problems.
Absolutely. And remember, even with the best preparation, unexpected things can happen. The key is to stay flexible, adjust your approach as needed, and never give up hope.
This is all incredibly insightful. I feel like I'm gaining a whole new perspective on urban preparedness.
Good.
It's not just about stockpiling supplies, it's about a mindset, a way of approaching life's challenges.
Exactly. And I think that's a message that resonates with a lot of people, especially those of us living in urban environments where space is limited and resources can be scarce. It's about finding creative solutions and empowering ourselves to be more resilient.
I completely agree. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yes.
is there any final thought you'd like to leave our listener with?
Yes. Actually, there's one more point I think is particularly relevant to our listener who's living in a smaller space.
Okay, I'm all ears. What is it?
It's about taking the concept of space optimization to a whole new level.
Ooh, intrigue me. What do you mean?
Think about your everyday belongings in a new light. Could your coffee table double as a storage container?
Oh,
Could you hang a hammock under your loft bed to create extra sleeping space?
wow, I never thought about it that way. It's like turning my entire apartment into a survival Swiss Army knife.
Exactly. It's about maximizing every nook and cranny, finding creative ways to store things, and turning ordinary objects into extraordinary resources. Remember, limitations often breed creativity.
This is blowing my mind. I'm already looking around my apartment and seeing all sorts of new possibilities.
Right.
I might not have a basement, but I have a whole lot of untapped potential in these four walls.
That's the spirit. And remember, preparedness is a journey, not a destination. There's always more to learn, more skills to develop, and more ways to adapt.
This has been such an empowering conversation. I feel like I've gone from feeling completely overwhelmed to feeling excited to start putting all these ideas into action.
That's fantastic to hear. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. There's a supportive community out there ready to offer guidance and encouragement.
I can't wait to connect with them. Now let's move on to the final part of our deep dive, where we'll bring all these ideas together and look at the bigger picture. Wow, we really covered a lot in this deep dive into these compact urban survival kits.
We did. It's amazing how much there is to consider,
Yeah.
even just in a smaller space.
Yeah, I know. I was a little bit skeptical at first, but this guide's really changed my perspective on a lot of this stuff.
I think it's interesting how it kind of like reframes the whole prepping thing. It's
Yeah.
not about hunkering down and waiting for the apocalypse.
Yeah.
It's more about just being resourceful and adaptable and resilient in our everyday lives.
Right. And that's what appealed to me about this approach. It's practical, it's realistic, and it
Mhm.
doesn't require a basement full of supplies or a bunker in the backyard.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about making the most of what you have, thinking creatively,
Yeah.
and using your space efficiently.
And for me, one of the biggest takeaways was that emphasis on mental preparedness. Because having all the gear in the world won't do much good if you're not mentally and emotionally prepared to actually face, a challenging situation.
Absolutely. I think the guide's focus on staying calm, being adaptable, and connected to your community is so important.
Yeah,
It's easy to get caught up in the supplies and the logistics, but having that right mindset can make all the difference.
totally. I completely agree. It's about empowering yourself with knowledge and skills and a sense of community rather than letting fear and anxiety take over.
And if we kind of connect this to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
it's about building resilience not just as individuals, but as communities.
That's a great point. Imagine if everyone in your apartment building had even a basic level of preparedness.
Right.
It'd create a much stronger sense of security and support during an emergency.
Exactly. It's about shifting from that me mentality to a we mentality,
Yeah.
recognizing that we're all in this together.
I love that. So for our listener who's maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed by all this information, what's the one key takeaway you'd want them to remember?
Start small.
Okay.
Pick one area that feels manageable, like water or first aid, and just focus on getting that squared away.
Okay.
Even small steps towards preparedness can make a big difference.
Great advice. It's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. And remember, there's a whole community of urban preppers out there ready to offer support and guidance. The guide even mentions the website www.portugueseprepper.com as a great resource.
Awesome. So for our listener, as you kind of embark on your own preparedness journey, remember to stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay connected to others. It's amazing how much we can accomplish when we work together.
I completely agree. This has been a really fantastic exploration of urban preparedness, and I hope it's given you some inspiration and motivation for your own journey.
Uh-huh.
Remember, it's not about living in fear, it's about empowering yourself to face challenges with confidence and resilience.
Beautifully said.